Hey everyone, tonight we are stepping back into a world where the earth itself trembles under the weight of living mountains, and the air is thick with the scent of jasmine, hot iron, and the impending doom of empires. Imagine you are standing on the sun-baked plains of Mesopotamia, the dust of Ctesiphon coating your throat like fine flour. To your left and right, the horizon is dominated by shapes so massive they seem to block out the very sun-armored Sassanid war elephants. Draped in scales of burnished bronze and iron, their tusks capped with sharpened steel. You are a small part of this grand, terrifying machine, and as you look up at the towering height of these beasts, you realize that if one of them decides to take a step in the wrong direction, you are essentially a human pancake. Let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive this, especially not when the Byzantines start throwing fire. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. If you're a regular, go ahead and drop your location and the local time in the comments. It's always fascinating to see where in the world you're re-listening from as we dive into these late-night rabbit holes. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The heat of the morning sun is already beginning to bake the armor of the beast standing before you. You are a Mahauta keeper and rider of these incredible creatures, and your bond with this 5'10" animal is the only thing standing between glory and a very messy death. The Sassanid Empire, the great rival to Rome, doesn't just use these animals for show. They are the iron towers of the Shahanshah's army. You can feel the vibration in your chest as the elephant, a magnificent bull brought all the way from the lush valleys of India, lets out a low-frequency rumble. This isn't just a pet, it's a biological tank. You watch as the laborers finish cinching the massive wooden howdah onto its Baka fortified tower that will soon house for elite Persian archers. The Sassanids are masters of psychological warfare. They know that a line of armored elephants can break the spirit of even the most disciplined Roman legionnaire before a single arrow is loosed. It's a mainstream historical fact that the Sassanid Elephant Corps was a distinct branch of the military, separate from the cavalry and infantry, with its own specialized commanders and logistics. You check the leather straps one last time. Everything has to be perfect. If the saddle slips during the heat of battle, the archers above will fall into the churning mess of infantry feet below, and you'll likely follow them. It's a high-stakes job with a terrible retirement plan. There's a strange, almost surreal beauty to the preparation. You see the light catching the chamfron, the metal plate protecting the elephant's forehead. It's decorated with the image of a snarling lion, meant to intimidate the enemy. But there's a quirky, fringe tidbit you remember hearing from the older Mahauts. Some of these elephants are allegedly addicted to a mixture of fermented wine and sugar water given to them right before a charge to make them more aggressive. Whether it's true or just camp gossip, you've seen the way their eyes glaze over and their temperament shifts from gentle giant to unstoppable engine of rage. You pat the beast's thick gray hide, feeling the heat radiating off it. You know that across the border, the Byzantines, the Romans, as they still call themselves, are watching. They've seen elephants before, but never like this, never this many, and never this well protected. Historians still argue whether the Sassanid use of elephants was a genuine tactical masterstroke or an expensive vanity-driven relic of a bygone era that the Persians simply refused to let go of. To you, standing in the shadow of the beast, the debate feels academic. The reality is the sheer physical presence of the creature. You watch the archers climb the rope ladders into the howdah. These men are the elite, the pil-savaran of the sky, trained to shoot with terrifying precision while their platform sways like a ship in a storm. They carry composite bows that can punch through Roman chainmail at 100 paces. It feels like an unfair advantage. How could anyone even the disciplined troops of Emperor Heraclius stand against a wall of walking fortresses? As you prepare to mount the beast's neck, you look at your own equipment. You carry a heavy iron goad to guide the elephant, but you also have a hidden tool of last resort, a sharp chisel and a mallet. It's the darker side of your profession. If the elephant panics and turns back toward your own lines, it's your job to drive that chisel into the base of its skull to kill it instantly. It's a grim insurance policy against the chaos of war. You hope it doesn't come to that. You want to believe that the armor and the archers are enough. The air is getting heavier now. The march is beginning. You hear the rhythmic thud of thousands of feet and the clanking of Persian cataphracts, heavy cavalry moving into position. The elephants are the anchors of the line. You guide your charge forward, feeling the massive muscles shifting beneath you. Every step covers the ground of 10 men. You look out over the sea of pointed Persian helmets and the fluttering silk banners of the various noble houses. It feels invincible. But you've heard rumors from the frontier. The Byzantines aren't just bringing spears and shields this time. They've been experimenting. They've been talking about the breath of the dragon. You try to shake the thought away. Your elephant is clad in iron. What can a little fire do to a mountain? You remember the stories of the old wars, where elephants were used to crush the spirits of the enemies of the Shah. The elephants aren't just weapons. They are symbols of the King of Kings' power to command nature itself. To own an elephant is to be wealthy. To field hundreds is to be a god king. You see the dust rising in the distance, a long, thin line of Roman scouts. They see you too. They turn and ride hard back toward their main camp. You can almost feel their fear drifting across the plains. It's a heady feeling. But as you adjust your grip on the goad, you notice a slight shiver in the elephant's trunk. Animals have a way of sensing things. Humans can't. A shift in the wind, a change in the atmosphere. The sun is high now, and the metal plates are getting hot enough to sting your legs through your trousers. The journey has truly begun, and the road to the Byzantine frontier is long, paved with the ghosts of those who thought they were untouchable. You settle into the rhythmic swaying gait of the beast, the world moving slowly around you, unaware that the rules of engagement are about to be rewritten in flames. The sheer engineering required to transform a biological entity into a mobile fortress is something that modern minds often underestimate. You aren't just looking at an animal. You are looking at the culmination of centuries of Sassanid military science. As you guide your elephant forward, the rhythmic clinking of its armor provides a metallic percussion to the heavy thuds of its footsteps. This isn't just a decorative leather flap. The Sassanids perfected the use of lamellar and scale armor for their pachyderms, covering the most vital areas of the head, the trunk, and the massive flanks with interlocking plates of iron and hardened bronze. It's a mainstream historical fact that these animals were often more heavily armored than the elite Clibonary cavalry that rode alongside them. The weight of the armor alone could exceed several hundred pounds, a burden only a creature of this magnitude could carry without collapsing from exhaustion before the battle even began. You lean forward, adjusting the chamfron that sits atop the elephant's massive forehead. This piece of equipment is vital. It protects the brain from the high-trajectory volleys of Byzantine archers who know that a single well-placed shaft can drop a giant. But the engineering doesn't stop at the head. Perhaps the most ingenious and terrifying piece of equipment is the trunk armor. The trunk is the elephant's most sensitive and versatile tool, and in battle, it is a primary target for enemy infantry. To counter this, Sassanid engineers developed articulated metal sleeves, like the segments of a lobster's tail, that allow the trunk to retain its mobility while shielding it from the elephant slayers who might try to lop it off with a falx. You've seen your beast pick up a fully armored man and toss him like a rag doll while wearing this gear, the metal glinting in the harsh Mesopotamian sun. There is a quirky, fringe tidbit that circulated among the armorers in the royal workshops. Some of the more paranoid generals supposedly experimented with coating the underbelly scales in a thick, sticky resin mixed with crushed glass. The idea was to discourage any Roman infantry brave or suicidal enough to crawl beneath the beast to strike at its softest point. Whether or not your particular elephant has this glass trap coating, you can't say for sure. But you've noticed the infantrymen give the animal's underside a wide berth during inspections. It's a testament to the Sassanid mindset of, it can be weaponized, it will be, and if it can be protected by a layer of iron, it must be. However, all this iron comes at a price beyond just the gold spent to forge it. The heat inside that metal casing is astronomical. You can feel the warmth radiating through your own boots as you sit perched on the animal's neck. Historians still argue whether the sheer weight and heat retention of this armor actually did more harm than good in the long run. Some suggest that the Sassanid obsession with heavy protection led to the elephants tiring prematurely, making them sluggish targets for the more agile Byzantine skirmishers. You've noticed your beast breathing more heavily than usual today, the air whistling through its trunk as it struggles with the added mass of the howdah and the 5 men it now carries. The howdah itself is a marvel of carpentry and weight distribution. It's not just a box tied to a back. It's a multi-layered tower of teak and oak, reinforced with iron bands and draped in colorful silks that hide even more armor plating. It's designed to be a stable firing platform. If you've ever tried to stand on a moving boat while shooting a bow, you have some idea of the difficulty these archers face. But the Sassanids compensated for the swaying motion by developing a sophisticated harness system that uses multiple points of contact across the elephant's chest and rump. It's a masterpiece of tension and balance, though you know that if a single one of those main cinches snaps under the strain of a charge, the whole tower will pivot like a falling tree. You look back at the archers. They are checking their quivers, their fingers gloved in leather to prevent blisters from the constant draw of their powerful composite bows. They trust the armor, they trust the beast, and most importantly, they trust you to keep the platform level. You feel a strange sense of pride in this mechanical biologic hybrid. To the Byzantines, this is a monster from a nightmare, a literal demon of the East. To you, it's a finely tuned engine of war that requires constant maintenance. You carry a pouch of oil and a rag just to keep the joints of the trunk armor from seizing up in the dust. As the sun climbs higher, the iron begins to shimmer with a heat haze. You see the light dancing off the steel caps on the elephant's tusks. These aren't just for show either. They are hollowed-out metal cones, sharpened to a razor point and fixed onto the ivory with heavy-duty resin and bolts. They turn a natural defensive tool into a pair of oversized lances. You've heard stories of these tusks piercing straight through the wooden shields of the Romans, pinning 3 men at once. It's a gruesome image, but one that gives you a flickering sense of security. But then, you look at the horizon. The air is clear, and the Roman lines are starting to take shape in the distance. They aren't panicking. In the past, the mere sight of the elephant corps would send a legion into a chaotic retreat. Now, they seem to be waiting, their ranks disciplined and silent. You notice they are positioning strange, bulky machines on their flanks. Not the usual ballistae, but something different, something with copper pipes and bellows. Your elephant shifts its weight, the iron plates clanking like 1,000 small bells. It's a sound of power, yes, but also a sound of rigidity. You wonder just for a second if the armor that makes you feel so safe is actually a cage. If the fire comes, there is no way to shed this iron skin in a hurry. You tighten your grip on the goad, the metal hot against your palm, and urge the living mountain forward into the gathering storm. The higher you climb, the more the world changes. As you haul yourself up the thick knotted ropes into the howdah, the ground seems to disappear, replaced by a panoramic view of the Sassanid war machine. This wooden tower, your home for the next several hours of grueling combat, is more than just a basket. It's an elevated sniper's nest. You feel the constant rhythmic lurch of the elephant's gait, a slow-motion swaying that would make a sailor seasick. From this height, you can see over the heads of the infantry, over the plumes of the cavalry, and straight into the eyes of the enemy. The men sharing this space with you are the elite of the Sassanid archer corps. Noble-born warriors who have spent their lives mastering the composite bow. They don't just shoot, they execute a choreographed dance of death, pulling back strings made of silk and gut with a draw weight that would snap a common man's arm. It is a mainstream historical fact that the Sassanid howdah typically carried between 3 and 4 archers, plus a commander who acted as the eyes for both the crew and the mahout below. The tower is shielded with reinforced plywood, an ancient version of it. Anyway, often draped in thick felt or even raw hides soaked in water to provide a rudimentary defense against enemy projectiles. You watch as one of the archers tests the tension of his bow. The bow itself is a work of art, made of layers of horn, wood, and sinew, designed to store an incredible amount of kinetic energy. From this elevated position, gravity is your ally. An arrow loosed from 10 feet up carries significantly more punch when it meets the top of a Roman's helmet than one fired from the ground. There is a quirky, fringe tidbit regarding the interior of these towers. Some accounts suggest that the howdahs were equipped with small, suspended gyrostabilized racks for spare arrows. These were simple wooden frames hung from the ceiling by leather cords, intended to keep the arrows from spilling out when the elephant entered a run. You see them now, swaying in opposition to the elephant's movement. A primitive but effective way to ensure that a warrior doesn't reach for a shaft, only to find his quiver empty. Every detail is calculated to turn the elephant into a sustainable weapon of attrition. You aren't just here for one charge. You are here to dominate the battlefield for hours. Historians still argue whether the howdah actually made the elephant more vulnerable by raising its center of gravity, While it provided a massive tactical advantage for the archers, the sheer weight of the timber and the men, perched so high up, meant that if the elephant tripped or was forced into a sharp turn, the risk of a rollover was terrifyingly high. You feel that risk in every stride. When the elephant navigates a slight dip in the terrain, the howdah tilts precariously, and you instinctively grip the side rail, your knuckles turning white. You look down at the mahout's head below you. He is your lifeline, and you are his guardian. From up here, you can pick off any Roman brave enough to approach the elephant's legs with a spear, protecting the beast that carries you. The view from the tower offers a strange sense of detachment. Below you, the world is a mess of dust, sweat, and screaming men. Up here, there is a breeze. You can see the Byzantine lines clearly now, the sun reflecting off their Draco standards and the polished crests of their helmets. They look like a shimmering river of silver. You see them shifting, forming the fulcrum, their version of the shield wall. From the howdah, you can see the gaps in their formation, the places where a well-placed arrow could find a throat or a thigh. It feels like playing a game of chess from a god's eye view. The archers beside you are silent, focused, their quivers filled with specialized bodkin points designed specifically to pierce Roman mail. But there is a new tension in the air today. Usually, the sight of the towers causes the Roman ranks to waver, but today they are unnervingly still. You notice that the archers are checking not just their bows, but also small pots of sand and damp cloths. You've been briefed on the Byzantine fire, but it's hard to imagine it reaching you all the way up here. You are in a fortress of wood and iron, perched on a mountain of muscle. The archers look at you, and you see the same thought in their eyes. Nothing can reach us. It's a dangerous kind of confidence. As the command is given to pick up the pace, the swaying of the howdah becomes more violent. You have to brace your knees against the padded interior walls to keep from being tossed around. The sound is incredible. The creaking of the wood, the snapping of the silk banners, and the deep, guttural trumpeting of the elephants in the line. It's a symphony of imperial power. You reach for your own bow, feeling the cool, polished surface of the horn. You look down at the ground again, noticing how the infantry seems to shrink as the elephant gains speed. You feel like a giant. But then, you catch a glimpse of a Byzantine soldier carrying a long, thin tube trailing a wisp of black smoke. He isn't running away, he's aiming. You realize then that the height of the howdah doesn't just give you a better view of the enemy, makes you the most visible target on the field. The Iron Tower is magnificent, yes, but it's also a lightning rod for the storm that's about to break. Maintaining a living mountain is a logistical nightmare that would make a modern quartermaster weep. As you guide your charge through the staging area, you aren't just thinking about the coming glory, you're thinking about the sheer volume of fuel this engine requires. An elephant doesn't just eat, it consumes on a scale that can bankrupt a small province. It is a mainstream historical fact that a single adult war elephant requires roughly 300 to 400 pounds of forage and upwards of 50 gallons of water every single day. Multiply that by a corps of several hundred, and you realize that the Sassanid army is essentially a giant stomach with an empire attached to it. The baggage train following you is miles long, filled with wagons of hay, grain, and the specialized treats used to keep these massive beasts from losing their tempers in the heat of the march. The Sassanids, being masters of administration, have this down to a science. They don't just feed the elephants grass. They provide a cavalry diet designed to maintain the animal's muscle mass under the crushing weight of that iron armor. You watch as the handlers toss bundles of sugarcane and compressed cakes of barley toward your beast. But there's a quirky fringe tidbit that highlights the lengths the Persians went to. Historical whispers suggest that during long desert crossings, elephants were sometimes fed a mixture of flour and melted butter, a sort of ancient energy bar to keep their strength up when fresh green forage was scarce. You've even seen some mahouts massage their animals, joints with expensive oils to prevent the armor rub that can lead to infections. It is a level of pampering that most of the infantrymen, eating their dry rations and sleeping in the dirt, can only dream of. However, the logistics of the elephant corps isn't just about calories, it's about psychology. Historians still argue whether the Sassanids intentionally intoxicated their elephants with fermented fruit or heavy wine specifically to induce a state of must-like aggression before a battle. You've smelled the sharp, vinegary tang of cheap wine on your beast's breath as you prepared for the morning's advance. While a drunk elephant is a terrifying weapon, it's also a chaotic one. A creature that can't feel pain is great for breaking a line, But a creature that can't follow orders is a liability to everyone standing nearby. You have to balance the animal's ferocity with just enough lucidity so it doesn't decide the baggage train looks more appetizing than the Byzantine infantry. As you move through the camp, you see the specialized elephant doctors, or zanpetis, tending to the herd. These men are highly respected, possessing a knowledge of pachyderm anatomy that is both a trade secret and a religious duty. They check for cracked hooves and skin irritations caused by the heavy bronze chest plates. You'll realize that the elephant is the most expensive single asset in the Shahanshah's arsenal. If a horse dies, you find another. If an elephant dies, you lose a decade of training and a small fortune in silver. This creates a strange paradox in your mind. You are riding the most powerful weapon on earth, yet the army is almost afraid to use it for fear of losing the investment. The logistics also extend to the waist. You don't often hear about this in the heroic poems, but 100 elephants produce tons of manure daily. This creates a literal trail of breadcrumbs for any Byzantine scout to follow. You can't hide in elephant cores. You can only hope to intimidate the enemy so much that they don't care where you are. The smell alone, a mix of dung, wet hay, and the metallic scent of the armories, a permanent part of your existence. You've grown used to it, but you see the Persian infantry coughing and waving the air as you pass. To them, you are a majestic but very messy neighbor. You look at the supply wagons again. They are carrying more than just food. There are spare leather straps, extra rivets for the armor, and massive vats of water. In the arid borderlands between the two empires, water is more valuable than gold. The Byzantines know this. They've been known to poison wells or divert streams just to watch the elephant core wither in the sun. You take a long pull from your own waterskin, feeling the grit of the road on your teeth. The logistics of war are slow, grinding, and unglamorous, but they are the foundation upon which the iron towers stand. Without that sugarcane and those 50 gallons of water, your beast is just a very large, very grumpy target. As the sun begins to dip, casting long, monstrous shadows across the sand, you realize the march isn't just a test of courage. It's a race against the depletion of your own supplies. As you peer over the horizon, the golden haze of the afternoon begins to shift, revealing the disciplined glint of the Byzantine host. These are not the panicked levies of centuries past. These are the survivors of a Roman world that has been pushed to the very edge of the abyss and refused to fall. You can see the standards of Emperor Heraclius fluttering in the distance. The Christian cross and the Roman eagle standing side by side, the Byzantine shadow is long and cold. Reaching across the Anatolian plains to challenge the sun-drenched supremacy of the Sassanid Shah, it is a mainstream historical fact that by the early 7th century, the Byzantine Empire was essentially a remnant state, fighting a desperate war for its own survival after losing its richest provinces to the Persian advance. Yet under Heraclius, the Roman military underwent a radical, lean transformation, shedding its old, slow infantry traditions for something much more dangerous. You watch as the Roman lines shift with a fluid grace that feels almost unnatural. They move like a single organism, responding to trumpet signals that cut through the low rumble of your elephant's footsteps. This is the shadow that haunts the dreams of the Sassanid High Command, the Roman ability to adapt. For generations, the Sassanids relied on the sheer shock value of the elephant cores to shatter the rigid Roman squares. But you notice something different today. The Byzantines are not tightening their ranks into a dense targetric mass. They are opening up, creating lanes and kill zones that seem designed to swallow a charging beast whole. There is a quirky, fringe tidbit suggesting that Heraclius himself spent hours studying the ancient manuals of Alexander the Great and Pyrrhus of Epirus, looking for the specific anatomical and psychological weaknesses of the war elephant that had been forgotten over centuries of peace. You feel a ripple of unease pass through the mahouts in your line. The Byzantines have spent years watching you from behind the walls of Constantinople and the forts of the frontier, and they have stopped being afraid. Historians still argue whether the Byzantine reform was a result of brilliant military genius or sheer terrifying necessity, the kind of innovation that only happens when the alternative is total extinction. Regardless of the cause, the effect is visible in the way the Romans measures the Siloi dance on the edges of your vision. They aren't running away. They are circling like wolves, testing the perimeter of a herd. They carry light javelins and slings, but more importantly, they carry an air of professional curiosity that makes your skin crawl. From your perch, you can see the Byzantine camp is organized with a geometric precision that mocks the sprawling, chaotic grandeur of the Sassanid encampment. They travel light, while you are weighed down by the iron towers and the miles of logistics required to feed them. You realize that the Byzantines have turned their poverty into a weapon of mobility. While you are stuck on the slow, predictable paths that can support 5-10 animals, the Romans are moving through the hills like ghosts. The shadow isn't just a metaphor, it's a tactical reality. They are choosing the ground, and more often than not, they are choosing ground where an elephant is more of a liability than an asset. As the sun dips lower, casting the Roman lines into silhouette, you see the flicker of campfires starting to dot the Byzantine ridge. They aren't just for warmth. You see men moving around large copperland cauldrons, the same ones you noticed earlier. There is a strange chemical smell drifting on the wind, acrid, oily, and sharp. It's a scent that makes your elephant toss its head and let out a nervous puff of air. You've heard the stories of burning water and fire that cannot be extinguished by sand or soil. You look at the heavy iron plates covering your beast's chest and wonder if they will act as armor or as a frying pan. The Byzantine shadow is no longer just a distant threat. It is a suffocating presence that forces the Sassanid army to stay on high alert. You see the Persian pil-savaran, the heavy knights patrolling the gaps between the elephants, their long lances held ready. They are the best the Shah has to offer, but even they look toward the Roman camp with a sense of grim expectation. The Byzantines have survived the Huns, the Avars, and the Slavs. They have learned how to fight monsters. You realize that to the Romans, your elephant is no longer a godlike engine of destruction. It is a problem to be solved with mathematics, fire and cold, hard steel. You pat the beast's neck, trying to offer a comfort you don't truly feel. As the darkness of the Byzantine shadow finally swallows the field, the air in the Sassanid camp tonight is different. It's thick with the acrid, oily scent of naphtha. You watch the specialists, the naphtindahs, handling their clay jars with the kind of delicate care one might show a sleeping cobra. It is a mainstream historical fact that both the Sassanids and the Byzantines utilized early forms of chemical warfare, specifically incendiaries derived from naturally occurring petroleum seeps in Mesopotamia. This burning water is the great equalizer. As you look at the massive ironclad hide of your elephant, you realize that while iron can stop a spear, it does nothing to stop the heat of a chemical fire. In fact, it might make things worse. Metal is an excellent conductor. If that armor gets hot enough, it will cook the animal alive from the outside in. You've seen the demonstrations in the backfields of Ctesiphon. A small jar of this refined naphtha is thrown against a wooden shield, and within seconds, the wood is a roaring pillar of flame that even the dampest sand struggles to choke out. But there's a quirky fringe tidbit about the Sassanid defense. Some mahouts allegedly experimented with fireproofing their elephants by coating the felt, underlayers of the armor, in a mixture of alum, vinegar, and even certain types of seaweed believed to resist heat. You aren't sure if your beast has been treated with this concoction, but you've noticed the armorers rubbing a pungent gray paste into the gaps of the scales. It smells like a blacksmith's forge and a stagnant swamp had a baby. But if it keeps your friend from panicking when the sparks fly, you'll take the smell any day. Historians still argue whether the Sassanids or the Byzantines held the early lead in this arms race of fire. While the Romans eventually perfected Greek fire, that legendary water-resistant terra Sassanids had been using hand-thrown naphtha grenades for centuries. However, the problem with using fire around elephants is the elephant itself. These are intelligent, sensitive animals with a deep ancestral fear of flame. You can train an elephant to ignore a spear or a screaming man, but the primal hiss of a naphtha pot is a different story. You feel your charge's skin twitch beneath your knees as a nearby torch flickers too close. Even the most fireproofed elephant is only as brave as its instincts allow, and fire is the ultimate instinct raider. From the howdah above, the archers are being issued fire arrow shafts with iron cages behind the point filled with tow and resin. You watch them wrap the tips, their hands steady but their faces grim. They know that once the fire starts, the battlefield becomes a chaotic mess where friend and foe are separated only by the direction of the wind. You look toward the Byzantine camp and see the same preparations. They have their siphons ready, the copper tubes glinting like the eyes of some metallic serpent. It's a terrifying thought, two empires about to set the world on fire. and you re-sitting on 5 tons of highly flammable organic material held together by leather straps and hope. The Byzantine secret, however, isn't just the fire itself, it's the delivery. They've begun to realize that you don't need to kill the elephant to win. You just need to make the elephant want to be somewhere else. If a Roman soldier can toss a single jar of naphtha onto the elephant's trunk or the soft tissue of its ears, the resulting agony will send the beast into a blind, trampling frenzy. This is the naphtha secret that keeps you awake at night. The very armor you wear, the iron that makes you feel like a god, becomes a prison in the heat. You've heard of thermal shock, where the metal expands and pinches the flesh, driving the animal mad before the flames even touch its skin, as the moon rises, casting a pale silver light over the jars of liquid death. You realize that the era of the unstoppable elephant is reaching a boiling point. The war is no longer just about who has the strongest muscles or the sharpest swords. It's about who can harness the most violent elements of the earth. You look at your elephant's trunk, protected by those lobster-like metal segments, and pray they are enough. You reach down and touch the leather pouch at your belt, containing the mallet and the chisel. The fire is coming, and you know that if the burning water finds its mark, you might have to use that chisel to save your own army from the very mountain you spent your life tending. The shadows of the camp seem to dance with the flickering orange of the naphtha jars, a preview of the hell that awaits at dawn. The morning air is crisp, but the sweat on your palms is warm as you lead your elephant through the final desensitization drills. This is where the bond between man and beast is forged into a weapon of war. It is a mainstream historical fact that Sassanid war elephants underwent rigorous training regimes, often lasting years, to ensure they wouldn't bolt at the first sign of conflict. You are putting the animal through its paces, steering it through a simulated battlefield littered with screaming men and the rhythmic clashing of shields. To an outsider, it looks like a chaotic dance. To you, it's a vital calibration of the animal's nervous system. If the elephant flinches when a spear tip glints in the sun, you've already lost. You guide the beast toward a row of training dummy-stuffed leather bags shaped like Roman legionnaires. At your command, the elephant doesn't just walk over them, it systematically crushes them, using its weight to grind the enemy into the dirt. But the real test is the noise. Handlers stand in a circle around you, beating massive bronze drums, and blowing discordant blasts on ox horns. The sound is a physical wall of vibration. There is a quirky fringe tidbit that some Sassanid trainers would actually slaughter cattle in front of the young elephants to get them. Accustomed to the metallic smell of fresh blood, they wanted the animals to associate that scent not with fear, but with the feeding of their own aggression. You can smell the copper tang in the air now, and you feel the elephant's ears flare a sign of irritation, but not panic. You lean down and whisper into its ear, a low guttural croon that only the two of you understand. Historians still argue whether this brutalization of the elephants actually made them more effective or simply more prone to sudden violent snapping points. A creature trained on blood and noise is a high-pressure vessel. You've heard of the rage of the red, a state where an elephant stops distinguishing between its own side and the enemy's. To prevent this, your training includes pressure release command, subtle taps of the goad or specific, vocal clicks that tell the animal when the hunt is over. You are the governor on this massive engine, and your task is to keep the needle just below the red line. As part of today's drill, the archers in the howdah are dropping light blunted practice bags onto targets below. You have to maintain a perfectly steady pace so they can find their rhythm. If you lurch, they miss. If they miss, the enemy gets close enough to strike at the elephant's belly. It's a symbiotic relationship that requires absolute trust. You watch the elephant's trunket's most vulnerable acetaz. It reflexively curls upward, tucked safely under the armored chin strap during the charge. This trunk tucking is a learned behavior, a survival instinct reinforced by months of painful drills where handlers would tap the trunk with stinging switches if it was left exposed. The most difficult part of the training, however, is the counter-scream. The Byzantines are known for using pigsy-esque squealing, terrified pigs to spook elephants. The high-pitched frequency of a pig's scream is something that supposedly drives an elephant to distraction. To combat this, you've spent weeks exposing your beast to the sounds of every farm animal imaginable, played back through loud, rhythmic chanting from the infantry. You're trying to build a wall of sound that the enemy cannot penetrate. You feel the elephant's heart beating through its thick hide, a heavy, slow thud that matches the rhythm of your own. You finish the drill by leading the beast through a firepath lane of small, controlled bonfires. This is the ultimate test. The smoke stings your eyes, and you feel the elephant's pace falter. Its skin ripples with a primal urge to turn and run. You use the goad, not to strike, but to guide, pressing the cold iron against the soft spot behind its ear to remind it that you are still there, still in control. It passes through the flames, the iron armor reflecting the orange glow, and for a moment, you feel like you are riding a creature of myth. But as you emerge from the smoke, you see the veteran mahouts watching you. They don't look impressed, they look worried. They know that no amount of training can truly prepare a living creature for the burning water. You have taught the elephant to ignore the noise and the blood, but you cannot teach it to ignore the sensation of its own skin, boiling under a layer of red-hot iron. You pat the beast's neck, the training finished, knowing that the next time you smell fire, it won't be a drill. The sun hangs like a heavy golden coin over the battlefield, and as the Sassanid line begins its slow, deliberate advance, you realize that your primary weapon isn't the archers or the tusksits, the sheer, unadulterated terror you radiate. It is a mainstream historical fact that war elephants functioned as terror weapons, a psychological sledgehammer designed to cause a total collapse of enemy discipline before the first arrow was even loosed. You can see it in the Byzantine ranks. Even from a distance, the sight of 50 iron towers cresting a ridge is enough to make the most seasoned veteran's stomach drop. The ground doesn't just vibrate, it hums with a frequency that humans feel in their teeth. This is the psychological front, a war of nerves where the first side to blink is the first to die. You guide your elephant into a wide, intimidating posture, letting it flare its ears which, beneath their armored flaps, make the animal look twice as large. There is a quirky, fringe tidbit that Sassanid commanders would sometimes paint the elephant's skin with bizarre hallucinogenic patterns or wrap their tusks in long scarlet streamers to make them look like supernatural demons rather than mere animals. You've seen some mahouts attach bells to the elephant's knees, creating a rhythmic, metallic jangle that masks the sound of their footsteps, making the advance feel ghostly and inevitable. The goal is to overload the Roman senses, between the smell of the beasts, the deafening trumpets, and the sight of these walking fortresses. The Byzantine soldiers are forced to fight their own survival instincts long before they fight you. Historians still argue whether the terror factor of the elephant was actually diminishing by this period in history. After all, the Romans had been fighting elephants since the days of Hannibal and Pyrrhus. However, the Sassanid version was different, more professional, more armored, and more integrated into a combined arms strategy. You watch the Byzantine front line. They are interlocking their shields, but you see the gaps widening as men instinctively lean away from the path of the giants. It's a subtle shift, a crack in the Roman wall that your commander will soon exploit. You feel a surge of dark confidence. To the man on the ground, you are not a soldier. You are an act of God. But the psychological war is a two-way street. As you stare at the Romans, you notice they aren't screaming. They aren't banging their shields in a frantic display of bravado. They are standing in an eerie, disciplined silence. This, too, is a psychological tactic. By not reacting, they are telling you that they are ready. You see their specialized elephant slayer unitsmen with long curved blades, known as Ramphia, standing calmly in the second rank. They've seen the demons before, and they know that demons can bleed. The silence of the Byzantines is starting to get under your skin, a cold counterpoint to the hot, rhythmic noise of your own army. You decide to turn up the volume. You use your goad to prompt a deep, lung-bursting trumpet from your beast. The sound echoes across the valley, a raw, primeval scream that seems to shake the very leaves on the trees. You see a few younger Byzantine recruits in the front rank stumble back, their faces pale. Your archers laugh from the howdah, shouting insults in Pahlavi that are lost in the wind. This is the moment where the psychological pressure is at its peak. If you can break their formation now, the battle will be over in 30 minutes. However, you catch a glimpse of Emperor Heraclius on his white charger, moving behind the Roman lines. He isn't looking at the elephants, he's looking at the gaps between them. He is projecting a sense of calm that radiates outward, stabilizing his men like a physical anchor. You realize that the terror weapon only works if the enemy believes the terror is inescapable. The Byzantines have spent decades being terrified. They've reached a point where fear has turned into a cold, mechanical focus. You tighten your grip on the goad, the psychological clash having reached a stalemate. The iron towers are terrifying, yes, but the men in front of you have decided that they would rather die in their ranks than live as cowards. The psychological front has done its work. Now, the physical butchery must begin. As the distance between the two imperial hosts closes to a few hundred yards, you witness the Byzantine pivot firsthand. For centuries, the Romans stood their ground in rigid rectangular blocks, but Emperor Heraclius has spent the last few years purging the army of its predictable habits. It is a mainstream historical fact that Heraclius revolutionized Byzantine tactics by emphasizing mobility and a defense in-depth strategy that avoided direct, hidden collisions with the superior Sassanid heavy units. From your high vantage point on the elephant's neck, you see the Roman center begin to thin out. They aren't retreating, they are stretching. They are transforming from a solid wall into a series of flexible, honeycombed cells. It's a terrifyingly clever maneuver that leaves your massive charge with no solid mass to crush, only a series of shifting targets that melt away as you approach. The Roman emperor is a man who understands that an elephant is a momentum-based weapon. If you can't stop the mountain, you simply get out of its way and hit it from the side. You see Heraclius himself, a flash of gold and purple on his stallion, moving with a speed that contrasts sharply with the ponderous rhythmic advance of your elephant line. There is a quirky fringe tidbit from the chronicles suggesting that Heraclius personally trained his elite cavalry horses using elephant-shaped wooden wagons covered in raw, stinking hides. To ensure the Roman mounts wouldn't bolt when the Sassanid corps appeared, it seems to have worked. The Byzantine horses are nervous, yes, but they aren't panicking. They are holding their ground, waiting for the signal to execute the pivot that will leave your armored giants punching at the air. Historians still argue whether Heraclius' tactical shifts were a true military revolution or merely a desperate adaptation to the fact that he simply didn't have enough men to fill a traditional Roman line. To you, the distinction is irrelevant. You feel the elephant's pace increase, its massive shoulders working harder as it senses the impending impact, but the impact never quite comes. Every time you aim your beast at a dense cluster of Roman infantry, the unit splits with practiced ease, guided by the sharp blasts of Byzantine trumpets. They are funneling you into lanes, narrow corridors of empty space, where the archers in your howdah find themselves shooting at shadows, while the Roman Seloi light skirmishers pepper the elephant's unarmored underbelly and legs from the sides. The pivot isn't just a movement of feet, it's a shift in the entire philosophy of the war. The Sassanids represent the old world of overwhelming static power, the iron towers that demand the world bow before them. The Byzantines, under Heraclius, represent a leaner, meaner future. You watch as a Roman unit of scoutatoy heavy infantry performs a perfect wheeling maneuver, turning their backs to you for a split second before reforming 20 paces to your left. It's like trying to stomp on water. Your archers are growling in frustration, their arrows finding only the occasional shield as the Romans stay just out of the crush zone. You realize that the pivot is designed to exhaust you. Every time the elephant has to change direction to pursue a retreating Roman unit, it burns an incredible amount of energy and puts immense strain on those iron-bound leg joints. You can hear the beast's breath coming in ragged, wet gasps now. The iron armor is starting to feel like a liability. While the Romans are light and agile in their leather and mail, you are encased in a tomb of Sassanid pride. You look toward the Sassanid commanders, expecting a change in orders, but they seem committed to the plan. They believe that eventually, the Roman lines will fail to pivot in time. They believe the mountain will always win, but the wind is shifting, and with it comes a new sound, the rhythmic, mechanical clicking of those Roman siphons you saw earlier. As the Byzantine units pivot, they are revealing hidden batteries of fire throwers that were previously masked by the infantry. Heraclius hasn't just moved his men, he's set a trap. You see the emperor raise his sword, the signal for the next phase of the Roman defense. The pivot was just the setup. The fire is the punchline. You tighten your knees against the elephant's neck, feeling the animal's skin shudder. The Roman shadow has moved, and now, for the first time in the campaign, the sun is shining directly on the vulnerabilities you've tried so hard to hide. As the Roman lines continue their rhythmic dance of evasion, a new and deeply unpleasant sensation begins to waft across the field. It's not the smell of death, not yet, but something sharper, more domestic, and utterly baffling. It's the smell of vinegar. You wrinkle your nose, the acidic sting cutting through the layers of dust and elephant musk. It is a mainstream historical fact that ancient and medieval commanders often used antelephant concoctions, ranging from the auditory to the olfactory, to disrupt the sensory of overloaded beasts. You see the Byzantine front-rankers, those who aren't wielding siphons, reaching into small earthenware jars and flinging liquid toward your elephant's feet and trunk. This is the vinegar defense, or as the Sassanid mahouts call it, the bitter rain. There is a quirky fringe tidbit suggesting that the Byzantines discovered that a certain concentration of fermented wine mixed with sulfur and pungent fish oil could overwhelm an elephant's incredibly sensitive trunk. Your beast, possessing a sense of smell many times more powerful than a human's, begins to shake its head violently. The trunk, shielded as it is by those lobster-like iron plates, is still a biological organ that needs to breathe. As the vinegar-sulfur mist hits the sensitive membranes, the elephant lets out a sneezing honk that nearly unseats you. You can feel the animal's focus shattering. It's no longer looking at the Roman shields. It's looking for a way to escape the invisible, stinging cloud. Historians still argue whether these chemical deterrents were truly effective, or if they were merely psychological placebos for the terrified Roman infantry. To you, the debate is answered by the way your elephant is currently behaving. It's resisting the goad. When you try to steer it toward a Roman gap, it recoils from the smell, its massive feet shuffling in a frantic lateral motion. You look down and see the ground is slick with a strange, frothy liquid. Some of the older mahouts warned you about the smell of the earth, a tactic where the enemy would drench the soil in substances that made the elephants think they were walking into a swamp or a pit of predators. The distraction is working. While you are busy wrestling with the goad to keep your beast from turning 180 degrees, the Byzantine archers are taking aim at the few unarmored spots they can find. They aren't shooting at the iron plates. They are shooting at the armpits of the beast, the soft skin behind the ears, and the mahout's own exposed legs. You feel a bolt whistle past your ear, a reminder that while the elephant is a tank, you are very much a soft, fleshy target. The archers in your hoda are swearing in frustration, their steady firing platform now vibrating with the elephant's rhythmic sneezing coughs. You try to use a damp cloth to wipe the animal's eyes, but the movement is jerky and dangerous. The vinegar smell is so strong now that your own eyes are watering. You realize the Byzantines have turned your elephant's greatest strength, its heightened senses, into its greatest weakness. They are hacking the animal's biology. This is unto the clean war of swords and spears you were promised in the training camps of Ctesiphon. This is a messy, chemical, and deeply undignified scramble for control. Through the haze of stinging tears, you see the Roman siphons being repositioned. The vinegar was just the appetizer. It was meant to disorient the beast, to make it stop its forward momentum, and to force it to lower its trunk in a defensive posture. Now that the Iron Tower has ground to a halt, the Byzantines are preparing the main course. You see a Roman soldier striking a flint near the nozzle of a copper tube. The acidic smell of vinegar is suddenly joined by the thick, heavy scent of heated bitumen. You realize that the bitter rain was just the setup to ensure you wouldn't be moving fast enough to escape the fire. You tighten your grip on the mallet and chisel, the metal cold and mocking in your hand. As the first hiss of an igniting siphon cuts through the chaos of the battlefield, the terrain is shifting, and with it, your confidence. As the campaign moves into the rugged Armenian highlands, you realize that the Sassanid war machine was designed for the flat, predictable floodplains of the Tigris and Euphrates, not these jagged vertical labyrinths. It is a mainstream historical fact that the Byzantine-Sassanid wars were often decided by geography as much as by steel, and the rocky, uneven ground of the north was the natural enemy of the heavy elephant cores. Every step your beast takes is now a calculated risk. An elephant's foot is a marvel of biological engineering, a fati, shock-absorbing pad that allows it to move silently, but it is not designed for loose shale or steep limestone inclines. You can feel the animal's hesitation through the soles of your boots. It tests the ground with its trunk before committing its weight, its massive muscles tensing with an anxiety that matches your own. The iron armor, which felt like a blessing on the plains, has become a treacherous weight. On a slope, the Iron Tower shifts the elephant's center of gravity to a dangerous degree. If the beast slips, the 800 pounds of metal plating will act as a sliding weight, pulling the animal down the mountainside in a catastrophic tumble. There is a quirky Fringe tidbit from the mountain tribes who watched these marches. They claimed the Sassanids had to employ thousands of laborers to literally pave narrow paths or cut steps into the rock, specifically so the elephant cores would slide into the ravines. You see these laborers now? Their backs broken from hauling stone, just so your living mountain can maintain its dignity. It's a logistical nightmare that slows the entire army to a crawl, turning your terrifying vanguard into a vulnerable tail. Historians still argue whether Heraclius intentionally lured the Sassanid forces into this terrain, or if the Persian high command simply suffered from a superweapon complex, believing that an elephant could overcome any obstacle through sheer majesty. Standing on a narrow ridge with a 300-foot drop to your left, you lean toward the latter. The Byzantines are like mountain goats here. Their light infantry skips across the crags, looking down at you with a mixture of pity and predatory intent. They know that in these passes, the elephant cannot charge. It can barely walk. You are trapped in a magnificent, expensive, and very heavy bottleneck. The psychological dynamic has flipped. On the plains, you were the hunter. Here, you are the prey. The Roman Siloi perch on the heights above, raining stones and light javelins down into the howdah. Your archers, usually so lethal, find their line of sight blocked by overhanging rock and the awkward angle of the slope. They are forced to fire upward, losing all the kinetic advantage of gravity they enjoyed in the open field. You hear a sharp crack as a large stone strikes your elephant's headplate. The beast let out a low, vibrating groan of distress. It wants to turn back, but the path is too narrow. There is only one way forward, deeper into the trap. You notice the mahouts in front of you are beginning to discard non-essential gear. Pieces of decorative silk and even some of the secondary armor plates are being left by the wayside to lighten the load. It's a desperate measure. You look at your own beast's chest plate, wondering if you should do the same. But the Iron Tower is the pride of the Shah. To strip the armor is to admit that the great king's power is limited by mere geology. You keep the iron on, but your hand never leaves the iron goad, constantly correcting the elephant's balance as the shale shifts under its massive pads. As the sun sets behind the jagged peaks, casting long, distorted shadows across the pass, you realize that the invincibility of the armored elephant is a myth born of flat ground. Here, in the silence of the mountains, the clanking of the iron plates sounds less like a war drum and more like a funeral bell. You can hear the Byzantine scouts whistling to one another from the ridges of Buva Cold, mocking sound that carries on the thin mountain air. They aren't going to fight you here. They're just going to wait for the mountain to do the work for them. You pat the beast's trunk, feeling the cold moisture of its breath, and pray that the next day's path leads back down to the earth where a giant can still stand tall. In the middle of the deafening roar of a 7th century battlefield, your voice is a pebble thrown into a hurricane. To control a line of armored giants, the Sassanid military developed a complex, rhythmic language of sound that didn't rely on the human throat. It is a mainstream historical fact that the Sassanids used a sophisticated system of drums, bells, and trumpets to signal maneuvers to the elephant cores. From your seat on the elephant's neck, you are part of a giant biological orchestra. You listen for the deep, resonant thrum of the cows, the massive copper kettle drums mounted on camels behind the line. A double beat means a slow advance. A rapid rolling thunder signifies the charge. Without these signals, the 50 elephants around you would be nothing more than a chaotic stampede of iron and flesh. The soundscape of the elephant cores is intentionally designed to be overwhelming. Attached to your beast's knees and the corners of the howdah are bronze bells that jangle with every step. There is a quirky, fringe tidbit that suggests these bells were tuned to specific frequencies to act as a homing beacon for the infantry. Amidst the dust and the blinding Byzantine pivot, a Persian soldier could find his way back to the safety of the elephant's shadow just by following the unique tone of his unit's bells. You feel the vibration of those bells through your own shins, a constant reminder that you are a moving landmark, a lighthouse in a sea of blood. Historians still argue whether this reliance on acoustic signaling was a fatal flaw in the Sassanid system. While it allowed for coordination, it also meant that the Byzantine scouts knew exactly what you were about to do before you did it. If a Roman officer recognized the charge rhythm on the Sassanid drums, he could signal his units to open the lanes before your beasts even reached a trot. You've noticed the Byzantine trumpeters, the buccanators, mimicking your signals, blowing discordant notes to confuse the elephants or drown out your commanders. It's a war of acoustic interference, and in the chaos, the elephants sometimes stall, their ears twitching as they try to decipher which voice to obey. Communication also flows downward from the howdah. The commander in the tower above you uses a series of taps on your shoulders with a long staff to tell you which way to steer when the dust makes it impossible for you to see the Roman lines. 2 taps on the left mean a hard pivot. A steady drumming on the center of your back means full speed ahead. It's a silent, tactile conversation. You trust the man above you to see the spears, you cannot, and he trusts you to keep the mountain upright. If a Byzantine arrow finds the commander, you are effectively blinded, left to navigate 5 tons of armored rage by instinct alone. You can hear the elephants to your right and left, communicating in ways the humans can't. They let out low-frequency, infrasonic rumbles that you feel in your gut rather than hear with your ears. They are talking to each other, sharing their fear of the shifting Roman lines and the acrid smell of the bitter rain. You realize that there are 2 wars happening, the one planned by the generals in Ctesiphon and the one being negotiated by the animals themselves. You try to keep your charges focus on the Persian drums, but the beast is increasingly interested in the nervous trumpeting of the young bull to your flank. As the Roman siphons begin to hiss in the distance, the drum beats of the Sassanid line become more frantic, urging you into a final, desperate push. You grip the goad, waiting for the specific, high-pitched blast of the silver trumpet that signals the total impact. The air is a thick soup of clanging bronze, screaming men, and the rhythmic thud of the cows. It's a symphony of empire. But as the first Byzantine pharaoh streaks through the sky, the music starts to falter. You realize that no matter how loud the drums beat, they cannot drown out the sound of a living mountain beginning to scream in pain. You brace yourself for the signal, hoping that the iron tower still remembers how to listen. The sheer visual of your armored beast often blinds people to the reality of its foundation. As you guide your elephant across the churned-up earth of the frontier, you are hyper-aware of the one place the iron cannot reach, the soles of its feet. It is a mainstream historical fact that the Achilles heel of the war elephant was its soft, sensitive footpads, while the Sassanid engineers could plate the trunk and the forehead in steel. The elephant requires the natural, tactile grip of its fatty heel cushions to maintain balance and mobility. The Byzantines, students of history and masters of the dirty wind, know this better than anyone. You look down and see the sunlight reflecting off thousands of small, 4-pointed iron spikes scattered across the mud caltrops. These tribuli, as the Romans called them, are a nightmare for a mahout. No matter how you toss them, one spike always points upward. There is a quirky fringe tidbit that some Persian mahouts attempted to fashion boots for their elephants out of thick, boiled leather reinforced with iron studs. However, these proved to be more of a hindrance than a help, as the boots would fill with mud and cause the beast to lose its footing on anything but the driest sand. You watch as the elephant in the line next to yours steps squarely onto a Byzantine caltrop. The beast doesn't just trump. It lets out a sound of pure, unadulterated agony that vibrates through the very ground. It lifts the punctured foot, and in that instant, the iron tower becomes a 3-legged stool in a gale-force wind. Historians still argue whether the Byzantine use of caltrops was the single most effective low-tech counter to the Sassanid elephant cores. While naphtha and fire got the headlines, the humble iron spike was responsible for neutralizing more elephants than almost any other weapon. Once a 5'10" animal has a 3-inch spike driven into its pad, it stops being a weapon and starts being a frantic stationary target. You see the Byzantine light infantry, the Psiloid, arcing forward the moment an elephant is hobbled. They don't go for the riders, they go for the hamstrings. You are forced to use your goad to steer your beast into a narrow, cleared path. But in the smoke and dust of the Byzantine pivot, finding clear ground is like trying to navigate a minefield in the dark. From the howdah, your archers are desperately trying to pick off the Roman engineers, who are still flinging handfuls of these spikes from leather satchels. It's a race against time. If the path in front of you becomes saturated with iron, your charge will end before it reaches the Roman line. You feel the elephant's hesitation. It's using its trunk to sweep the ground in front of it, a natural instinct to protect its feet. But every time it stops to sweep, it becomes a sitting duck for the Roman siphons. The weakness in the heel has turned the Sassanid strategy of overwhelming momentum into a slow, agonizing crawl. The psychological toll on the animal is immense. An elephant that has been pricked once becomes pathologically cautious. You feel your beast's confidence evaporating, It's no longer a bold conqueror. It's a nervous creature stepping on eggshells, or in this case, jagged iron. You try to urge it forward, but the animal's survival instinct is overriding your commands. You realize that the Byzantines have essentially turned the earth itself against you. The iron armor on the elephant's back is useless if the feet cannot carry it, and the weight of that armor only serves to drive the caltrops deeper into the flesh when a step is finally taken. As the Roman line begins to advance, you see them walking through the caltrops. With ease they've worn heavy-soled caligae and marked out safe lanes that only they know. They are mocking you. You look down at the massive gray columns of your elephantess legs and see a trickle of blood from a superficial prick on the ankle. It's a tiny wound compared to the scale of the beast, but in the grander scheme of the battle, it's a leak in the hull of a sinking ship. The Byzantine iron spikes have done what 1,000 spears could untade. They have made the mountain afraid to move. You tighten your grip on the mallet, the last resort chisel, feeling heavier by the minute. As you realize the ground beneath you is no longer your ally, the sky is no longer blue. It's a canvas of gray smoke and orange streaks as the first Byzantine skirmish erupted into a full-blown inferno. This is the moment where the theory of the Iron Tower meets the reality of incendiary physics. It is a mainstream historical fact that Byzantine forces made heavy use of incendiary arrow shafts tipped with tow, pitch, and sulfurt to target the most sensitive areas of the war elephant. As you brace yourself against the elephant's neck, you see a volley of these fire arrows arcing through the air. They aren't aimed at the iron-plated flanks or the shielded howdah. They are aimed at the trunk. Despite the articulated metal sleeves you've so carefully oiled, a trunk must remain somewhat exposed to allow the animal to breathe and balance. A single flaming arrow lodged in the soft tissue near the nostrils is enough to turn a disciplined war machine into a screaming vessel of panic. You watch in horror as one of these fire arrows finds its mark on the bull to your left. The beast doesn't just trump, it lets out a sound that is half scream, half sob. The iron trunk armor meant to protect now acts as a heat trap, holding the burning pitch against the skin. There is a quirky fringe tidbit from the medical texts of the time, suggesting that the scent of burning pachyderm was so distinctive and pungent that it could cause horses 3 miles away to bolt in terror. You can smell it now, the acrid stench of scorched hide and the chemical sweetness of the Byzantine resin. Your own beast feels the heat, its trunk reflexively curling and uncurling, tucking itself under its chin in a desperate attempt to hide from the stinging sparks. Historians still argue whether the primary goal of these fire arrows was to kill the elephant or simply to induce a stampede state. Killing a 5'10" animal with a small arrow is nearly impossible, but shattering its mind is remarkably easy. You feel the vibration of the elephant's vocal cords through your thighs. A low-frequency distress call that signals the beginning of the end for the Sassanid formation. The archers in your howdah are frantically firing back, their bows snapping with a rhythmic thwip-thwip, but they are shooting at men, while the Romans are shooting at a mountain. It's an asymmetric trade. You realize that even if your archers killed 10 Romans for every arrow that hits your beast, the loss of one elephant's composure will result in the deaths of hundreds of your own infantry. The fright is contagious. Your elephant is no longer listening to the goad, it's listening to the screams of its kin. You try to use the cool-down commands you practiced in the drills, but those were designed for the smell of blood, not the sensation of being cooked. You see the Byzantine skirmishers, the Siloi darting forward under the cover of the smoke, tossing small clay pots of liquid naphtha that shatter against the elephant's legs. The fire spreads along the grease and oil you use to lubricate the armored joints. The Iron Tower is literally catching fire at the seams. You are sitting on a powder keg, and the fuse is already burning. You look up at your archers. Their faces are masked by soot, their eyes wide with the realization that the platform beneath them is becoming unstable. The elephant begins to dance a rhythmic, frantic shifting of weight that makes the howdah sway like a ship in a hurricane. You can hear the wooden frame creaking, the leather straps groaning under the tension. If the beast turns now, the momentum will snap the cinches. You lean forward, pressing your face against the elephant's damp, hot skin, trying to offer some semblance of human presence amidst the mechanical horror. "Stay," you whisper, but the word is swallowed by the hiss of a nearby Byzantine siphon. The Roman fire and fright tactic is a masterpiece of psychological engineering. They know that an elephant in pain doesn't think, it reacts. and a reacting elephant always moves away from the source of the pain. By placing the fire arrows and naphtha pots on the beast's front and sides, the Byzantines are effectively steering the Sassanid corps back toward their own lines. You see the Persian infantry behind Youtha spearmen who were supposed to exploit the gap your charge created, now looking up in terror as 50 tons of armored, burning meat begins to backpedal. The Iron Tower is no longer a weapon of the Shah. It is a runaway hammer, and your own army is the anvil. In the hierarchy of the Sassanid military, you are the pilot of a god, but you are not its only guardian. Flanking your massive charge are the pil-savaran, the elite, aristocratic knights who represent the iron fist of the Persian nobility. It is a mainstream historical fact that the Sassanid army relied on a combined arms doctrine where the elephant corps and the heavy cataphract cavalry worked in a lethal, synchronized partnership. These knights are encased in the same high-grade lamellar armor as your beast, their faces hidden behind expressionless iron masks that make them look like silver statues. Their job is simple but brutal. Protect the elephant's vulnerable flanks from the Byzantine pivot, and ensure no Roman infantryman gets close enough to strike at the hamstrings. You feel a brief surge of relief as a squadron of pil-savaran trots into position beside you, their long kantos lances leveled like the needles of a giant compass. These men are the cream of the Sassanid social order. Warriors who have trained since childhood to fight from the saddle. There is a quirky fringe tidbit that the relationship between a pil-savaran knight and a mahout was often one of tense mutual necessity. The knight looked down on you as a common laborer, yet he knew that, if your elephant panicked, his expensive thoroughbred horse would be the first thing crushed under a 5'10" foot. You see the lead knight glance up at you, his eyes cold through the slits of his visor, before he turns his attention back to the Roman skirmishers. Historians still argue whether the pil-savaran were actually capable of protecting the elephants once the Byzantine fire warfare began. While a knight can parry a spear or trample a swordsman, he can do very little against a spray of liquid naphtha or a cloud of stinging vinegar. As the Byzantine Seloi begin their harassment, the pil-savaran find themselves in a desperate struggle. Their horses, though trained for war, possess a natural, deep-seated terror of elephants, especially elephants that are trumpeting in pain and smelling of scorched flesh. You watch as a knight's mount rears back, terrified by a sudden blast of flame from a Roman siphon, nearly unseating the armored rider. The iron flank is starting to fray at the edges. The synergy is breaking down. The Sassanid doctrine requires the elephants to break the line and the cavalry to exploit the gap. But the Byzantine pivot has ensured there is no line to break, only a series of shifting, fiery traps. The pil-savaran are forced into a defensive role they weren't designed for. Instead of charging, they are standing still, trying to screen the elephants from the Roman fire teams. But a stationary cataphract is just a heavy target. You see a Roman archer put a bodkin arrow through the neck joint of a knight's armor, and the iron statue topples into the mud with a clatter that sounds like a sack of hammers hitting the floor. From the howdah, your archers are trying to coordinate with the knights below, signaling the location of hidden Roman units. But the smoke is too thick, and the noise of the battle, the clanging of iron, the screaming of horses, and the hiss of fire has rendered the cowstrums nearly inaudible. You realize that the pil-savaran, for all their bravery and expensive gear, are just as trapped as you are. They are part of a rigid system that is being dismantled by a more flexible enemy. The knights are looking to you for momentum, and you are looking to them for protection. But both of you are being choked by the Byzantine shadow. As a fresh wave of fire arrows streaks toward the elephant's head, you see the pil-savaran line begin to pull away. It's not a retreat, not yet, but a tactical widening of the gap to prevent their horses from being caught in the elephant's potential death roll. You are being left alone in a pocket of fire and iron. The aristocratic knights, the pride of Persia, are finding that even the thickest armor cannot protect them from the chaos of a mountain in revolt. You tighten your grip on the goad, the absence of the knight's presence, making the battlefield feel suddenly, terrifyingly large. The Sassanid knightly class was supposed to be your shield, but as the first sparks land on your elephant's ears, you realize that in this new kind of war, everyone is fighting for their own survival. The silence of a Roman scout is often more dangerous than the roar of their infantry, and as you navigate the deepening chaos of the front, you begin to realize just how much the enemy knows about you. It is a mainstream historical fact that the Byzantine Empire maintained the most sophisticated intelligence network of the late antique world. Utilizing the agentes in Rabusa, dedicated corps of inspectors and spies to track Sassanid troop movements. They didn't just guess that the Shahanshah was bringing elephants. They knew the exact count, the health of the herd, and even the names of the lead mahouds. You feel a chill that has nothing to do with the wind. The sense that every move you make has been anticipated by a clerk in Constantinople, weeks before you even broke camp. The Byzantine Secret Service was a machine of cold efficiency. There is a quirky fringe tidbit suggesting that Roman spies would actually infiltrate Sassanid supply lines disguised as fodder merchants, intentionally selling the Persians low-quality grain or tainted hay to ensure the elephants arrived at the front with digestive issues. You recall the sluggish behavior of the bulls 3 days ago and wonder if a Roman agent was responsible for the colic that sidelined 5 of your best iron towers. It's a subtle, invisible form of warfare that undermines the majesty of the elephant corps. While you are preparing for a grand clash of titans, the Byzantines have been busy attacking your beast's stomach from the inside out. Historians still argue whether Byzantine intelligence was the primary reason for their tactical flexibility during the 7th century wars. By knowing the precise number of elephants in each Sassanid division, Heraclius could distribute his limited supply of naphtha and specialized elephant slayer units with mathematical precision. You look at the Roman line and notice how they clustered their heaviest fire siphons, exactly where your most aggressive bulls are positioned. This isn't coincidence. It's data-driven slaughter. They have stripped away the fog of war that usually protects a charging army, leaving you exposed and predictable. From your high perch, you see a Roman officer holding a series of colored flags, signaling to units hidden behind the ridge. They are reacting to your movements before you've even fully committed to a turn. It's like wrestling a ghost. Every time you think you've found a weak point in their shadow, it vanishes. Your archers are becoming increasingly paranoid, loosing arrows at every shifting bush or suspicious shadow. Fearing that a Roman scout is lurking nearby with a signal mirror or a mesogepagen, the psychological pressure of being watched is starting to weigh as heavily as the iron armor. This intelligence advantage also extends to the naphtha secret. The Byzantines knew exactly how your armor was fastened. They knew that the leather cinches under the elephant's belly were the weak points of the entire howdah assembly. You see a group of Roman skirmishersmen who seem to calm for the situation, waiting for the precise moment your elephant raises its front legs to clear a ditch. They aren't aiming for the thick hide. They are aiming for the straps. The Byzantine spy network has provided them with a biological and mechanical map of your beast, turning your impenetrable defense into a series of highlighted targets. As the sun catches the Roman signaling mirrors on the distant heights, you realize that the Sassanid obsession with grandeur has made you an easy target to track. You cannot hide an elephant, and you cannot keep its needs a secret. The Byzantine shadow is built on information, the cold, hard reality of numbers and maps. You look down at your elephant, a magnificent creature of muscle and history, and realize it is a relic of an age where size mattered more than secrets. In this new world, the man with the loudest trumpet loses to the man with the quietest spy. You urge the beast forward, feeling the weight of 10,000 Roman eyes watching your every stumble. The horizon is no longer the open plains of the frontier, but the staggering golden-hued walls of the world's most coveted city. You are standing in the shadow of the siege of Constantinople in 626 AD, a moment where the Sassanid war machine and its Avar allies attempted to decapitate the Byzantine Empire once and for all. It is a mainstream historical fact that this siege was the turning point of the Great War. Yet for all the majesty of the Sassanid army, there was a glaring, mountainous absence on the western shore of the Bosporus, the elephant corps. As you look across the churning blue waters toward the Theodosian walls, you realize that the very animals that made the Persians invincible on land were the reason they were paralyzed here. You can put a 5-ton armored elephant on a wooden galley without it becoming a floating coffin for everyone involved. The logistics of the sea proved to be the one wall the Shahanshah's iron towers could not scale. There is a quirky fringe tidbit from the naval chronicles of the time suggesting that the Sassanids actually attempted to build massive flat-bottomed rafts to ferry a small contingent of elephants across the strait under the cover of night. However, the plan was allegedly scrapped when the first test subject, a young bull, sensed the movement of the tide and panicked, capsizing the raft and drowning a dozen elite engineers. You look at the small, nimble Byzantine dramongs patrolling the water, their siphons ready to spit liquid fire at any Sassanid vessel. Even if you could get an elephant onto the water, the Romans would have turned it into a floating bonfire before it reached the halfway point. Historians still argue whether the absence of elephants at the siege of Constantinople was the primary reason the Sassanids failed to breach the walls. Without the biological battering rams that had smashed Roman forts in the east, the Persian army was forced to rely on traditional siege engines that the Byzantines, masters of Greek geometry and defensive engineering, were well equipped to destroy. You feel a strange sense of impotence. You are part of the most terrifying unit in the world, yet you are stuck on the wrong side of the water, watching the smoke rise from the suburbs of the city. The Iron Tower is a king on land, but a prisoner of the coast. From your camp on the Asian side, you can see the Byzantine defenders on the walls. They aren't shivering in fear of your elephants. They are mocking you. They know that as long as the Roman navy controls the Bosporus, your giants are nothing more than very expensive decorations. This is the ultimate Byzantine shadow, the realization that the Roman Empire isn't just a collection of soldiers, but a geographic fortress protected by the very sea. The archers in your howdah are restless, shooting arrows into the waves in frustration. They were promised the spoils of the Second Rome, but instead, they are watching their Avar allies get slaughtered in the Golden Horn, because the Sassanid heavy hitters couldn't make the crossing. You watch the sun set behind the domes of the Hagia Sophia, the light reflecting off the water in a way that looks like spilled gold. You realize that the Sassanid strategy was built on a continental litha idea that the world is a flat, dry plain where the biggest creature always wins. The Byzantines have spent 1,000 years learning the temperament of the sea, and they've used that knowledge to create a barrier that no amount of iron armor can penetrate. The iron towers are grounded. While the battle for the city rages, you are left to exercise your beast in the sand, keeping its muscles from seizing up. A ghost of a threat that can't find its way across the threshold. The psychological impact of this stalemate is profound. For the first time, the Sassanid army feels small. You look at your elephant, its tusks still capped in steel, its armor still polished, and you see a weapon that has been outmaneuvered by a puddle of salt water. The Byzantines have survived the greatest siege in history because they understood that power is unjust about what you can crush it about where you can go. As the fires of the Avar camps burn low on the distant shore, you realize the tide of the war has shifted. The Roman shadow has stretched across the water, and your living mountains are finally, for the first time, irrelevant. The distance between the Titans and the foot soldiers has vanished, and you find yourself in the middle of a frantic, claustrophobic nightmare. This is the stage of the battle where the Byzantine pivot stops being a dance and starts being a slaughter. It is a mainstream historical fact that the Byzantine military developed specialized elephant slayer units infantrymen who were specifically trained to exploit the blind. Spots of the Sassanid giants, as you look down from your elephant's neck, you see them. Small groups of 4 or 5 men, lightly armored and incredibly fast, diving into the dead zone directly beneath the beast's belly. They carry the ramphia, a terrifying curved blade that looks like a hybrid between a scythe and a sword, designed to deliver deep shearing cuts to the soft tissue of the elephant's legs. You feel a jolt of pure adrenaline as a group of these slayers slides under your beast's chest, evading the trampling feet with a suicidal grace. There is a quirky fringe tidbit that these specialized units were often recruited from the roughest frontiers of the empire. Men who had grown up hunting lions or bears and possessed a nerves of steel temperament that most legionnaires lacked. They don't look up at the Iron Tower with awe. They look at it like a butcher looks at a side of beef. You try to use the goad to make the elephant pivot and crush them, but the animal is too slow, its massive weight working against it in the close quarters scramble. The iron plates on its flanks are useless against a man who is standing 3 inches away from its unarmored knees. Historians still argue whether these hand-trunk combat tactics were the result of a formal Byzantine training manual or a desperate grassroots adaptation born of the carnage on the frontier. To you, the distinction is meaningless as you watch a slayer reach up with a hooked blade, attempting to snag the leather cinches that hold your howdah in place. If he cuts those straps, the Iron Tower will tilt, and you'll be thrown into the mud with the very men you were just trying to trample. Your archers are leaning over the rail of the howdah, firing arrows almost vertically downward. But the angle is awkward, and the Roman shields are reinforced with thick rawhide that deflects the shafts at such close range. The horror of hatchet-trunk combat is the intimacy of it. You can see the sweat and the grime on the faces of the men below. One of them makes a daring lung for the elephant's trunk, the most sensitive and vital organ. Your beast lets out a panicked, high-pitched trumpeting as it reflexively curls its trunk upward. But in doing so, it exposes the soft skin of its neck. You see the flash of a Byzantine blade, and a spray of hot, dark blood hits the iron armor of the elephant's chest plate. It's not a fatal wound, but it's enough to send the animal into a spiraling frenzy. The living mountain is no longer a weapon. It is a victim, being picked apart by 1,000 tiny stings. You realize that the Sassanid reliance on size was a trap. By making the elephant so big and so heavily armored, you've created a target that cannot defend its own underside. The Byzantines have turned their smallness into an advantage. They are like parasites on a whale, biting at the places the whale cannot reach. You feel the elephant start to stumble step, a sign that the slayers have successfully nicked a tendon or a muscle in the hind legs. The rhythmic, powerful gait of the Sassanid advance is gone, replaced by a jerky, agonizing limp. You scream for the Pil-savaran cavalry to intervene, but they are tied down by their own fights, leaving you alone in this pit of curved steel. As the smoke from the nearby siphons drifts through the legs of your beast, you see the slayers preparing for a final coordinated strike. They aren't trying to kill the elephant outright, they are trying to disable the engine. If they can force the elephant to its knees, the battle in this sector is over. You grip the goad with both hands, trying to force the animal to move, to trample, to do anything but stand still. But the elephant slayers are patient. They know that every second you spend fighting them is a second you are uncharging the Roman line. The Iron Tower is being dismantled from the ground up, and you are beginning to realize that the most dangerous man on the battlefield isn't the one with the biggest weapon, but the one brave enough to crawl into the shadow of a god with a kitchen knife. The air over the plain of Nineveh is thick with the ghosts of ancient empires, but today the ground belongs to the living and the dying. This is the moment where the Sassanid-Byzantine War reaches its terrible final crescendo. It is a mainstream historical fact that the Battle of Nineveh in 627 AD was the decisive engagement that broke the back of the Sassanid military and paved the way for the end of the war. As you guide your elephant toward the center of the Roman line, the earth beneath you is no longer the dry dust of Mesopotamia. It is a slick, treacherous slurry of mud and blood. A heavy rain has turned the battlefield into a quagmire, and for an armored giant, the mud is a death sentence. Every step is a struggle for traction, the iron plates on the elephant's legs caked in heavy, wet clay that adds hundreds of pounds to its burden. You look across the field and see the Byzantine Emperor Heraclius himself. He isn't hiding behind his lines. He is leading from the front, a literal beacon of Roman resilience. The Byzantines have chosen this ground with a hunter's precision. There is a quirky, fringe tidbit that suggests the Roman engineers actually diverted small irrigation canals into the field the night before to ensure the ground would be as soft as possible for the Sassanid heavy units. Whether it was divine intervention or Roman sabotage, you feel your beast sinking. The Iron Tower is no longer a mobile fortress. It's a bogged-down monument. You see the other elephants in your line struggling, their rhythmic advance replaced by a desperate lunging motion as they try to keep their footing in the deep silt. Historians still argue whether the Sassanids could have won at Nineveh if they had simply waited for drier weather. But the Shahanshah's pride demanded a victory, and the elephant corps was ordered into the muck. You watch as a Roman unit of heavy infantry, the skutotoi, deliberately retreats into the deepest part of the marshy ground, beckoning you forward. It's a classic Byzantine trap. As your elephant follows, its front left leg sinks up to the knee. The animal lets out a low, vibrating groan of terror. You use the goad, screaming at the beast to pull itself free, but the suction of the mud is too strong. The momentum of the Sassanid charge has been completely swallowed by the earth. From the howdah, your archers are frantic. They are shooting as fast as they can, but their targets are no longer standing in neat rows. The Byzantines are scattering and flanking, using the elephant's immobility against it. You see the Roman fire teams moving into position. They don't need to aim carefully anymore. You are a stationary target. A Byzantine siphon bearer, his copper tube glinting through the mist, let out a stream of liquid fire that splashes against your elephant's flank. Because the animal is stuck in the mud, it can't move away from the heat. The fire begins to cook the skin beneath the iron plates. The smell of that acrid chemical stench of burning naphtha fills your lungs. And you realize that Nineveh isn't going to be a battle, it's going to be a funeral pyre. The psychological weight of the moment is crushing. You can see the Sassanid infantry behind you beginning to waver. They were supposed to follow in your wake, but your wake is now a series of burning, screaming obstacles. You realize that the great battle of Nineveh is where the myth of Sassanid invincibility finally dissolves. The iron towers are being picked apart by men who are half their size but twice as clever. You look at the Roman line one last time and see Heraclius raising his sword, signaling for the final push. He knows you can't move. He knows the mud has done more work than 1,000 spears. You reach for the mallet and chisel in your belt. The elephant is trumpeting in a way you've never heard a sound of pure high-pitched madness. It's starting to lean, its weight shifting toward the howdah supports. If the beast falls, everyone in the tower is dead. You look at the back of the animal's skull, the spot where the chisel must go. Your hand trembles. This isn't just a weapon, it's the creature you've lived with for 5 years. But the fire is spreading, and the Romans are closing in with their curved blades. The climactic encounter of two empires has come down to this: a man, a mallet, and a mountain of meat that is about to become a liability. The mud of Nineveh is cold, but the fire is very, very hot. The line has finally snapped, and the result is a vision of hell that no training manual could ever prepare you for. It is a mainstream historical fact that the greatest danger of the war elephant was not its death, but its panika state, known as turning, where the animal loses all sense of allegiance and charges blindly away from the source of its pain. As the Byzantine fire at Nineveh intensifies, your beast finally hits its breaking point. A stream of liquid naphtha has found the gap between the headplate and the neckguard, and the resulting agony is more than the animal's massive nervous system can process. You feel a sickening lurch as the elephant pivots 180 degrees, not with the grace of the Byzantine pivot, but with the desperate, staggering violence of a creature that simply wants the world to stop burning. You are no longer a mahout. You are a passenger on a 5-tan wrecking ball, aimed directly at your own side. Behind you, the Sassanid infantry, the brave spearmen, and the noble pil-savaran are still advancing, their ranks tight and disciplined. They see you coming, but they don't see a comrade. They see an avalanche of iron and screaming meat. There is a quirky fringe tidbit that the sound of a panicking elephant actually changes frequency, emitting a specific jarring shriek that causes other elephants in the vicinity to mirror the behavior instantly. You hear that shriek echo down the line, and like a row of falling dominoes, the Sassanid iron towers begin to turn inward. The very weapons meant to shatter the Roman line are now pulverizing the Persian heart. Historians still argue whether the panic of the giants was the single most common cause of Sassanid defeat in the later stages of the war. While the Byzantine fire was the catalyst, it was the Sassanids' own reliance on such large, sensitive animals that turned a tactical setback into a strategic catastrophe. You watch in horror as your beast's massive front foot descends onto a unit of Persian archers who were supposed to be your support. There is no time for them to scream. The mud of Nineveh, which previously trapped you, now acts as a lubricant for the slaughter, the bodies of your own countrymen sliding beneath the elephant's weight. The iron tower has become a traitor. From the howdah above, you hear the archers crying out in Pahlavi, their voices high and thin with terror. They are being tossed around like dice in a cup as the elephant gallops through the mud. One of them loses his footing and tumbles over the side, his colorful silks snagging on a decorative bronze rivet before he is dragged beneath the churning feet. You lean forward, your face inches from the elephant's scorched ear, and you see the eyets, no longer the intelligent, calm eye of your companion. It is white, rolled back, and filled with a primal madness. The rage of the red has taken hold. The animal is no longer an engine of the Shah. It is a force of nature trying to escape its own skin. You feel the mallet in your hand. This is the moment the chisel was forged for. You have to kill the mountain to save the army. You place the cold iron tip against the base of the skull, right where the spinal cord meets the brain. But the elephant is thrashing so violently that you can't get a clean strike. Every time you raise the mallet, the beast lunges, and you are forced to cling to the harness just to keep from being thrown. You realize the bitter irony. The armor you spent years maintaining is now protecting the animal from your own mercy strike. The thick iron neck guards make it nearly impossible to find the mark amidst the smoke and the blood. As you look back, you see the Byzantine lines closing the gap you've just created by trampling your own men. They are cheering. To them, this is the ultimate victory watching. The Persian demons do their work for them. The panic has spread to the horses of the Savaran, and the Sassanid center is dissolving into a chaotic mess of fleeing men and rampaging giants. You are at the center of a whirlpool of failure. You take one last look at the beast's head, feeling the heat of the fire on your own skin, and you realize that the Iron Tower was never a fortress. It was a cage that was always destined to break from the inside out. The silence that follows a great battle is not a true silence. It is a heavy, ringing absence, filled with the scent of spent naphtha and cooling iron. You are standing on the edge of the Nineveh plain, looking out over a landscape that was only hours ago the stage for a clash of civilizations. It is a mainstream historical fact that the aftermath of the Sassanid Byzantine Wars left the Middle East a graveyard of heavy equipment, with thousands of suits of armor and discarded weapons littering the desert for years. You walk through the mud, your boots heavy, and you see them. The iron towers, now fallen and still. They look like massive, overturned ships made of gray flesh and rusted bronze. The majesty is gone, replaced by the grim reality of a military doctrine that literally collapsed under its own weight. You find a discarded chest plate from an elephant's armor, half buried in a rut. It is scorched black, the beautiful engravings of lions and suns warped by the intense heat of the Byzantine fire. There is a quirky fringe tidbit that the local villagers in the centuries following these wars would often scavenge the iron plates of the fallen elephants to make plows and door hinges, turning the instruments of imperial terror into the tools of a struggling subsistence. You touch the metal, and it's still faintly warm from the afternoon sun. It feels like a relic of a lost world. The Sassanid Empire's economy was bled dry to forge these plates, yet here they are, scattered across the mud like scales from a dead dragon. Historians still argue whether the physical cost of the elephant cores, the sheer tonnage of iron, and the years of specialized training was what ultimately bankrupted the Sassanid state before the Islamic conquests. As you look at the fallen giants, you see the high price of tradition. The Sassanids clung to the elephant as a symbol of their Persian Indian heritage, a link to the glory of the Achaemenids and the Parthians. But the Byzantines had no such sentimental attachments. They fought with the cold, calculating efficiency of a state that had moved past the era of the monster. You see the scorched remains of a howdah, its tick frame splintered and blackened. Somewhere inside that wreck are the elite archers who once thought they were untouchable gods of the sky. The environmental impact of the battle is visible in the churned-up earth and the blackened trees. An elephant's death roll can flatten a small grove of trees and leave a crater in the soil that lasts for decades. You realize that the aftermath of the iron isn't just about the metal, it's about the waste of life and resources on a scale that is hard to comprehend. Every fallen elephant represents 20 years of care and the labor of 100 men. The Byzantines have moved on, their army already marching toward the next strategic objective, leaving you and the survivors to sift through the wreckage of an obsolete dream. You see a group of Sassanid prisoners being led away by Roman guards. They aren't looking at their captors. They are looking at the dead elephants. For a Persian soldier, the sight of a fallen elephant is more than a tactical loss. It's a theological one. It's the death of the idea that the Shahanshah commands the natural world. You feel a hollow sensation in your chest. You spent your life tending to the iron towers, believing they were the anchors of the world. Now, you see that they were just targets. The iron didn't protect them. It only ensured that they stayed in place long enough for the fire to find them. As the evening mist begins to roll in from the Tigris, the shapes of the fallen giants become blurred, turning back into the mountains they were named after. You pick up a small piece of a broken Tuskapa sharp steel cone that was supposed to pierce Roman shields. It's chipped and dull. You realize that the era of the Sassanid Byzantine Wars was the final desperate gasp of a specific kind of heroism, the kind that relied on size and spectacle. The future belongs to the light, the fast, and the fiery. You turn your back on the field of Nineveh, the clinking of your own armor feeling like a burden you are finally ready to shed. The giants have fallen, and the iron is cold. The true scale of a defeat is often measured in ledgers rather than blood. And as you watch the remnants of the elephant corps huddle in the cold Mesopotamian night, you are witnessing the literal bankruptcy of an empire. It is a mainstream historical fact that the Sassanid Byzantine Wars were a war of attrition that drained the gold reserves of both Ctesiphon and Constantinople to their breaking points. However, the Sassanids bore a unique, gargantuan burden: the elephant tax. Maintaining a single war elephant, with its iron armor, specialized handlers, and 400 pounds of daily forage cost as much as maintaining a small squadron of elite cavalry. When dozens of these animals were lost in a single afternoon at Nineveh, it wasn't just a tactical blow. It was an economic heart attack from which the Shahanshah's treasury would never recover. You listen to the camp talk of the remaining mahouts, their voices low and bitter. They speak of provinces that have been squeezed dry of every silver dram to pay for the iron towers, that now lie rusting in the mud. There is a quirky fringe tidbit that toward the end of the conflict, the Sassanid administration became so desperate that they began accepting elephant fodder in lieu of traditional taxes, leading to a strange economic reality where the empire's wealth was measured in bundles of sugarcane and barley rather than coin. You look at your own beast, now stripped of its heavy plates to save its strength, and you realize you are writing the most expensive failure in the history of the East. The living mountain has become a white elephant in the most literal sense, a gift of power that eventually consumes the owner. Historians still argue whether the economic collapse of the Sassanid state was the inevitable result of this super weapon obsession, or if the empire could have survived if it had invested that gold into a more flexible navy or light infantry. To you, the answer is written in the hollow eyes of the soldiers around you. They are hungry, their gear is in disrepair. Yet the elephants are still fed their ration of wine and grain, because the prestige of the Shah demands it. The Sassanid state was a machine designed for a certain kind of heavy war. And when the Byzantines changed the rules to fire and mobility, the Sassanid economy proved too rigid to adapt. The cost of the armor alone is staggering to contemplate. Each plate of high-grade Sassanid iron had to be forged by a master smith, fitted to the specific contours of an animal that never stops growing, and then transported across 1,000 miles of desert. You recall the sight of the royal workshops in Ctesiphon, where thousands of men hammered at bronze and steel day and night. That labor is gone now, vanished into the smoke of the Byzantine naphtha. You realize that every time a Roman siphon-bearer destroyed an elephant, he wasn't just killing a beast, he was incinerating the tax revenue of an entire district. It was an asymmetric economic war that the Sassanids were doomed to lose. The ripple effect of this collapse is starting to show at the edges of the empire. Rumors are reaching the camp of unrest in the eastern provinces of governors who refuse to send more men or grain to a war that seems to be a bottomless pit. The Iron Tower was a symbol of stability, but now it is a symbol of waste. You see the pride with which you once polished the beast's champhron as a kind of madness. The Byzantines, by contrast, fought a lean war, relying on their maritime trade and a smaller, more specialized force. They didn't need to feed mountains, they only needed to burn them. As the moon hangs over the camp, you feel the weight of the silver that isn't in your pouch. The Sassanid dream of a world empire is crumbling because they spent all their capital on a weapon that was too big to win and too expensive to lose. You pat the elephant's trunk, feeling a strange pity for the animal. It didn't ask to be a symbol of a dying economy. It was just a creature caught in the machinery of human hubris. You realize that when the history of this war is finally written, the most important battles won't be the ones fought with swords, but the ones fought in the counting houses of the Shah, where the iron towers finally proved to be a weight the world couldn't carry. The orange glow on the horizon isn't the sun. It's the future of warfare, and it is terrifyingly bright. You are witnessing the rapid, lethal evolution of Byzantine incendiary technology, a transformation that has turned the Roman shadow into a wall of flame. It is a mainstream historical fact that while the Byzantines didn't invent fire, they perfected its delivery through the development of the Cherasiphona portable, handheld flamethrower that allowed individual soldiers to project liquid fire with surgical precision. As you watch a Roman skirmisher test his device, the hiss of the pressurized pump sounds like a predatory animal. This isn't the clumsy clay pot of naphtha from the early wars. This is a mechanical predator designed specifically to exploit the weaknesses of the armored Sassanid giants. The Byzantines have turned chemistry into a religion of destruction. There is a quirky fringe tidbit from the secret laboratories of Constantinople suggesting that the Roman alchemists experimented with adding quicklime and refined resins to their petroleum base, creating a substance that wouldn't just burn, but would actually react violently when mahouts tried to douse the flames with water. You've seen it happen. An elephant's flank is hit with the liquid fire, and when the panicked handlers throw water on it, the fire erupts into a blinding white flash of heat. It is a living hell that defies the laws of nature. The Sassanid responds, coating the armor in alum and vinegars, like trying to stop a tidal wave with a wooden spoon. Historians still argue whether the Byzantine liquid fire, often confused with the later, more advanced Greek fire of the 670s, was truly a secret formula or simply the result of better mechanical engineering. To you, standing in the path of a siphon, the distinction is academic. The delivery is what matters. The Byzantines have learned that they don't need to pierce the iron armor. They just need to turn it into a conductor. You see a Roman fire team moving with the practiced synchronization of a watch. One man pumps the bellows, another directs the copper nozzle, and a third holds a flickering pilot light. It is an offensive juggernaut that moves faster than your elephant can turn. The psychological shift is absolute. The Sassanid Iron Tower was built on the principle of the unstoppable force, but the liquid fire is the irresistible end. You feel the heat from a nearby test firing, even from 50 paces away. The smell is no longer just oil. It's something sharper, more metallic, and deeply unnatural. Your elephant, a creature of the forest and the plain, recognizes this fire as something other. It's not the fire of a brush clearing or a campfire. It's a predatory element that eats through metal and bone alike. You see the animal's trunk shielded in those expensive articulated plates tremble as the hiss of the siphon echoes across the field. You realize that the evolution of incendiaries has rendered the combined arms of the Sassanid army obsolete. What good is the Pil-savaran cavalry if their horses melt away from the heat? What good are the elite archers in the howdah if the wooden tower they stand in becomes a chimney for the flames below? The Byzantines have bypassed the Sassanid defense entirely by attacking the environment the elephant exists in. They aren't fighting the beast, they are fighting the air it breathes and the ground it stands on. The liquid fire is a strategic pivot that has left the Shahanshah's military doctrine in the dust of history. As the Roman legions prepare for the next engagement, you see the rows of copper pipes glinting like the teeth of a dragon. The Sassanid Empire spent 400 years perfecting the armored giant, only for the Byzantines to solve the puzzle in a single generation of chemical innovation. You look at your own hands, calloused from the goad and stained with the oil of the armor, and you realize they are the hands of a dinosaur. The iron towers are magnificent, yes, but the dragon is breathing, and its breath is a fire that iron cannot stop. You tighten your grip on the elephant's harness, knowing that the next time the siphons hiss, the world as you know it will simply go up in smoke. The wreckage of the Sassanid dream has barely cooled before a new shadow begins to lengthen across the dunes, one that carries no heavy iron plates, and moves with a speed that makes the Byzantine pivot look sluggish. It is a mainstream historical fact that the exhaustion of both the Sassanid and Byzantine empires after their titanic struggle directly facilitated the rapid expansion of the early Islamic Caliphate. As you sit among the survivors of the elephant corps, you hear the tales of a new kind of warrior emerging from the south. These are the Rashidun, and they have been watching the iron towers fall with a scholar's eye and a hunter's heart. They saw how the Byzantines used fire to dismantle the Sassanid giants, and they have taken that lesson to a terrifying mobile extreme. The lessons of the fallen are being written in the sand. There is a quirky fringe tidbit that the Arab commanders, particularly the legendary Khalid ibn al-Walid, supposedly studied the Sassanid failures at Nineveh to develop a zero-weight doctrine. While the Persians spent a fortune on armor that turned into an oven, the rising Islamic forces prioritized camels and light cavalry that could strike and vanish before an elephant could even finish its first trumpet of alarm. You realize that your beast, for all its majesty, is a prisoner of its own logistics. It requires a road, a river, and a kingdom's worth of grain. The new enemy requires only the desert and a handful of dates. The Iron Tower has become a fossil in real time. Historians still argue whether the Sassanid over-reliance on heavy units was a symptom of an empire that had grown too civilized to remember the fluidity of the steppe. You see the truth in the way your fellow mahouts talk about the coming storm from the south. They aren't talking about fire siphons, they are talking about the cutting of the hamstrings. The Arabs have taken the Byzantine elephant slayer tactics and refined them into a lightning-fast cavalry maneuver. They don't dive under the beast with curved blades. They ride past on horses that have been desensitized to the elephant smell, delivering a single surgical strike to the tendons before disappearing into a cloud of dust. It is a lesson in the lethality of simplicity. You look at the empty hewdas stacked in the corner of the camp. They represent a philosophy of war that is being systematically deleted. The Iron Tower was a statement of permanence, a way for the Shahanshah to say, "I am here and I am immovable." But in a world where the enemy is everywhere and nowhere, being immovable is a death sentence. You realize that the Byzantines haven't just defeated the Sassanids, they've cleared the stage for a different kind of actor. The lessons of the fallen are bitter. Size is a vulnerability. Armor is a trap, and tradition is a weight that eventually pulls you under the mud. The psychological impact of this realization is the final blow to the cores. The Mahouts, who once walked with the pride of priests, now move like ghosts. They know that the next war won't be fought on the plains of Nineveh with drums and bells. It will be fought in the narrow alleys of cities and the shifting dunes of the deep desert, where an elephant is nothing more than a very large target that cannot hide. You see a young handler trying to repair a broken chest plate, and you want to tell him to stop? There is no point in fixing the iron when the very idea of the Iron Tower has been shattered. The Sassanid military tradition is a beautiful, expensive ship that has run aground on the reality of the 7th century. As the wind picks up, carrying the fine red dust of the southern deserts, you feel the era of the giants slipping away. The lessons of the fallen aren't just for generals, they are for you. You realize that the only way to survive the coming storm is to be as light and as fast as the fire that destroyed your mountain. You look at your elephant one last time, its skin gray and wrinkled like the map of an empire that no longer exists. The giants are tired, and the world is moving on to a faster, hotter rhythm. The iron is no longer a shield. It's a memory of a time when we thought size was the same as strength. The final embers of the great Sassanid-Byzantine struggle are cooling, and as you stand in the quiet dusk of a dying era, you can feel the iron towers fading into the mists of legend. It is a mainstream historical fact that within a few decades of the Battle of Nineveh, the war elephant virtually disappeared from the Middle Eastern theater of war. The Sassanid Empire, exhausted by its obsession with these armored giants, collapsed under the weight of the Arab conquests, and the Byzantines, having survived the fire, retreated into their own shrunken borders. You are the last of a lineage, a keeper of ghosts. The elephants that once made the earth tremble are being sold off to local lords for labor, or simply left to wander back into the wild as the infrastructure of the great elephant cores dissolves into dust. You look at your own beast, now standing silent and unburdened by iron in the pale moonlight. There is a quirky fringe tidbit that the last surviving Sassanid war elephants were supposedly taken as prizes of war by the caliphs, who kept them in royal menageries, not as weapons but as curiosities, living relics of a defeated superpower. You imagine your companion, who once carried elite archers through the fire of the Byzantine siphons, now spending its days being fed fruit by curious children in a courtyard in Medina or Kufa. It is a peaceful end, perhaps, but a jarringly quiet one for a creature that was born for the roar of the cow's drums and the clatter of the ssavaran. Historians still argue whether the disappearance of the war elephant was a technological inevitability or a cultural choice. Did the animal lose its place because of the Byzantine fire, or because the world simply became too fast and too poor to sustain a living mountain? To you, the answer is in the stillness. The ghostly echoes of the Sassanid-Byzantine wars aren't found in the songs of poets, but in the silence of the empty stables and the rusted armor plates that still occasionally turn up in a farmer's field. You realize that the Iron Tower was a dream of absolute power that the 7th century finally woke up from. The world of Heraclius and the Shahanshah was a bridge between the ancient and the medieval, and the elephants were the heavy stones of that bridge that finally gave way. You feel a strange, weary peace. The sway of the elephant's gait, which once felt like the pulse of an empire, now feels like a slow, rhythmic lullaby. The Roman shadow and the Persian fire have both receded, leaving only the desert wind and the stars. You reach out and touch the beast's rough, gray hide, no longer hot from the sun on iron, but cool in the evening air. You realize that you probably wouldn't have survived the fire, the mud, or the panic if fate hadn't been kind. And yet, here you are, a witness to the end of the giants. The iron towers have fallen, but the animal remains. A testament to a time when men tried to capture the majesty of the world and clothe it in steel. As the light fades entirely, the shapes of the landscape begin to blur. The ridges where the Byzantine siphons once hissed now look like sleeping dragons, and the distant ruins of the Sassanid outposts look like the bones of a forgotten age. You lead your elephant toward the horizon, moving slowly, without the need for drums or signals. The war is over, the armor is gone, and the journey has finally come to its quiet, inevitable conclusion. You are no longer a soldier of the Shah. You are just a man walking with a friend into the deep, cooling shadows of history. The night has grown deep now, and the world outside has settled into that heavy, expectant silence that only comes when the stories have all been told. You can feel the weight of the day lifting, replaced by the soft, rhythmic hum of the fan and the fading imagery of armored giants and flickering Byzantine flames. The iron towers have long since returned to the earth, their iron rusted into the soil and their screams hushed by the centuries, leaving behind only the gentle echo of a world that once dared to be grand. Everything is still now. The fires have cooled, the drums have ceased their thunder, and the long, weary march of the empires has finally reached its resting place. You find yourself drifting, the boundaries of the room softening as the history we've explored settles into a calm, distant memory. There is no more fire, no more steel, and no more Ma Donley, the quiet reassurance that the journey is complete and the giants are at peace. The air is cool, the shadows are long and kind, and the journey we took together has safely brought you back to the shore of sleep. Let the images of the desert and the golden walls of the city fade into a soft, gray mist. You are safe, you are still, and the story has reached its end. Everything is exactly as it should be. The mountain is at rest, and so are you.